completed yesterday. Okay, so we're going to learn a little bit of Reb Shlomo and Parshat Shmot. Do we have any volunteers to read? Good.
Shmot, fearing is not too good enough. With Yaakov, each man in his household came. Shmot, name. There are all kinds of fear in this world. There is a fear where I am afraid for my life, and I have no peace. Then there is another type of fear, and this is when I'm afraid I didn't do good enough. In a crazy deep way, this type of fear gives me so much strength. Can you imagine how deep my davening is? That each time I finish davening, I feel I didn't daven enough. At one time, the holy Reb Shlomo came to a city of Misnagdim, those who oppose the Hasidic tradition. When they finished praying, they would learn, but by the holy Reb Shlomo, after you pray, you have a l'chaim and you might eat some cake. The Reb Shlomo arrives with a bait midrash, and after he finishes to pray, he says, "Gavalt, I need a little bit of cake and a bit of drink." The Misnagdim are looking at him, thinking he is crazy. Suddenly, one of them gets up and says, "You just stood before God, and the first thing you're doing is looking for a piece of cake? We just stood before God, and we went straight to the learning." I'll tell you, Reb Shlomo says, when you pray, you are so pleased with yourself. You think to yourselves, not only did I daven well, I also know how to learn real good. I want you to know, when I finish praying, and my mouth feels so broken. I feel so broken that I didn't pray properly, and if I wouldn't eat something, I would mamash die. This greatest fear of all fears, I don't feel I did well enough. This is absolutely the Holy of Holies.
Okay, stop there and tell me why you laughed.
I don't know. It just seems very like melodramatic a little bit. That's all. I also think that we have to count our progress. I think that we have to view ourselves that there's always like something higher that we are aspiring to attain. Yet it's not that we didn't do well enough, we didn't do good enough. It's just that like we can aspire to go even farther. So there's appreciation of the self and appreciation of the moment of wow, look how well I did, and then acknowledgement of how much more we have to go. I feel like this is very much like almost like a victim card, like poor me.
So it depends. So it depends what level you're at. Okay, so how do you explain? How do you explain the verse in the Torah that says that Moshe Rabbeinu was the most humble person of all men on earth? How do you understand Moshe Rabbeinu being the most humble? How could he be? Like if I would meet him and I would be faced with his humility, wouldn't I say, wait a minute, who went up to Mount Sinai, you or me? You're the one who went up to Har Sinai. How could you be more humble than me? How do you understand that?
Yeah, okay. I think that Moshe is very much like me and Yochi, like who am I? Like who am I to receive all these different things? And he very much made a space within himself to receive godliness and act as a vessel and a medium to transmit Torah, to transmit God to people. So there isn't very much like capital S, like self or ego there, but there's also acknowledging that he is a leader. So he wasn't when God said like Moshe, he's like, here I am. Like and I kind of like arose to the occasion anyway and accepted where he is in the present, and he accepted, okay, my role here is to be a leader. But he also kind of rid of the ego to a point where he didn't let like this greed, like
good, but how? But very good. But how is he the most humble of all people?
I think that because he was so great, he still always retained the space of me and Yochi, like who am I?
Right. So he's standing and talking to some guy in the shuk who's selling potatoes, and he thinks that this guy in the shuk is better than him.
Does he?
Yeah, that's.
Or does he think that he's just different?
No, that's what most humble means. That he thinks that this person deserves more honor than he himself does. That's.
He's looking at it from like a soul point of view. Like he's not looking at them externally. Our souls come from the same place.
Okay, so then, but why think that this person is even better than he himself is? It's one thing to, I honor everybody, right? But to actually feel that this person selling the potatoes is actually better than myself, okay? So what I want to get at is in response to what we just read. What's if you ask me, like what's my highest vision of Judaism and what I can achieve, okay, and what we can achieve. So you have a certain vision that, let's say, goes up to here, okay, and if you've gotten this far, right, all right, I've done pretty well, right, okay. The guy selling the potatoes might be down here, and I can't really be more humble than him, right? This is one explanation. But if your vision of God and the greatness of Hashem is like way, way, way over there, right? Then no matter how much you've achieved, you realize that there's so much more. Okay? There's so much more. Now, if like one big rabbi in Yerushalayim is not alive anymore, he said that if he manages to do Shachris, and that every time he says Baruch Atah Hashem, he actually thinks about those words that he's saying that day is for him a Yom Tov. Okay? For him, that's a great achievement. It was a great davening, right? But if you have a sense of how far you can go in prayer, and how you can go so much further because God is so much greater than you ever realized before, then you feel really humbled by the experience. Because yes, I know I davened. But it's like could have been so much better. Okay? Reb Levi Yitzchak Berditchev would not start davening each day until he did tshuva on yesterday. Well, you can be sure he wasn't having a hamburger and French fries yesterday. You know, what did he do wrong? What was he do? What was his tshuva on? His tshuva on was that having come to the realization that there's even more than he ever realized before. Why didn't I achieve even more? Why didn't I do better? Let's take another example in sciences, okay? Who's the greater scientist? The one, or physicist or whatever, the one who has the answers or the one who has the questions? The one who has the questions, right? And the greater the scientist, he has even greater questions, right? Like you're a pretty smart scientist if you can already think about the questions that are going to be researched, let's say, in the next 2-3 years, right? But what about the scientists who can already envision the questions that are going to be coming up in 20 years from now, right? Now, from his perspective, yeah, we're doing some great stuff today, but compared to what it's going to what we're going to be doing in 20 years from now, this is garnished, right? There's your phone. You have one too, probably. I've got one too, an iPhone and so on, right? To you, that's garnished, right? 50 years ago, people weren't even able to imagine it yet, right? So you had a regular telephone with one line that worked pretty good, okay? But if you really already had the vision of that in 2015, there's going to be these handheld devices that you can WhatsApp across the world, that you can do this, you can do that, you can do that, you can do that. You already would look at that telephone back in 1950 and you say, this is nothing, right? So the Misnagdim who were laughing at the Reb Shlomo, they finished davening. Oh, I really did well. Like I said my prayers. I had kavanah. It was really, really good. But if your davening is on the level of I want to bond. I want to bond with God, literally. Okay, to bond. And if at the end of davening you feel that, yeah, I've achieved some of it, but I still have myself. I still have my egotistical self. So somebody on the level of the Reb Shlomo, like he'd have to eat something. He'd have to to resuscitate his soul, so to speak. Okay.
I feel like in a way the Raptors Rebbe, his understanding is a bit more I don't want to say righteous. I don't think one person's like I don't think he's better than them and they're better than him, but it's in other ways it's very righteous. Because it seems to me that like the Mitnagim, they kind of see like there's a phrase like the glass ceiling. That's how far one can reach. It seems that from their prayer, they're like, oh, we've reached the glass ceiling. Now we're gonna learn and like keep it rolling. And he saw, and then the Rochester Rebbe saw no glass ceiling. Like there was no ceiling at all. So oh, I could have ascended even higher, could have even higher. At the same time, it's also a very depressing way to live. And I have not learned a lot of Tanya, but I've learned like a few chapters, and so like one has to make sure that they don't view themselves as like a tzaddik, but also not as an evil person because they don't feel so discouraged. They won't do anything.
Right.
And it sounds like what he's saying is like he felt so discouraged, and he actually
right.
So is that?
So he was. Believe me, he wasn't discouraged. But you're right. So you're quoting the very opening of the Tanya, and at the same time, in the Tanya, I have to go open the drain. Excuse me. We're like at the low point of this neighborhood, so like you end up getting the river down here into the house.
Shona? Near Eastern Bahar Street. Not on Eastern Bahar, but near.
I live on the Hub Park, which is like parallel to the
Okay. Nice. Lovely. Do you know anyone looking for another apartment date?
Yeah.
Enough of us?
Yeah.
Are you?
No.
Okay.
Two of my friends have just found someone, found a place, 2 bedrooms. And like it's going to be quite expensive. And then I find a third person.
After the class, can we discuss this? Then like contact every month.
And I was literally just talking to my friend before I came.
Yeah. I also think that like it's a very amazing thing to treat oneself physically when they attain a spiritual goal. So I can the way that I understand this text also is that like when he ascended to a holy place and he let go, and he also was like, oh, I saw the ego and it was kind of hard on himself, but also chose to ascend anyway and chose to try anyway, and he would just be like, oh, never mind, I can't do it. And also like eating something could be like rewarding yourself versus like kind of like tugging yourself along. The Bentucking is very like not like a harsh philosophy, I think.
It's very different, but so what I was saying is like this, going back to the Tanya. There's a lot of the dilemma is like this. We have a divine soul not called Nefesh Elokit, and we have an animal soul called Nefesh Bahamit. Okay? The Nefesh Bahamit is, you can sort of think about it like an operating system, okay? It's intention is self-preservation and gratification and self-gratification. Okay, which in and of itself is not bad, but once it gets corrupted, it can become evil. Okay, now the divine soul wants to go back to its source. The divine soul wants to go back to its root. It wants to go back into being in bond with Hashem. But the divine soul has no choice. It's been sent down to this world, and it has to reside in our bodies, and it has to live in this world. And what's the point? What is it that we have to do over here? We have to elevate and connect this entire world to the unity of Hashem, so that the oneness of God is manifest and visibly manifest in this world, that people realize Hashem Echad Shmo Echad. God is one and His name is one. Okay. Now, not an easy task, because basically we have the struggle between the divine soul and the animal soul as to who's going to be in charge of this being. The animal soul says, listen, I'm in charge. And the struggle goes so far that the way the Gemara puts it is very amazing. The Gemara says, Ganva apun machtarta rachmana karya. A thief, as he's breaking and entering, is praying to God for success. So the obvious question is, excuse me, sir, what are you doing? Well, I'm breaking and entering. I'm going to rob. And why are you praying to God? Well, I don't want to get caught. I want to be successful. So the animal soul tells the divine soul, guess what? Tonight we're going to do a robbery, and you're not staying home. You're coming along, and you're going to pray. Right? So it's just a very powerful way to portray this big conflict between the animal soul and the divine soul. Okay. Now, the divine soul is described as being in a state of exile, enslaved. In fact, the whole story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, if you change the vowels in the word Mitzrayim to Meitzarim, it means to get out of your narrows. Okay, Paro is described as being the Oref. This is the same letters as Oref, the back of the neck. Paro is like is in the Kabbalah described as being positioned over here between the mind and the heart. Paro says to Moshe, you want to serve God? It's just a mind trip that you're doing. Everything from here down is my territory. I've got my Sarhalfim, I've got my baker, I've got my butcher, I've got my winemaker. Okay? And all that, those are all metaphors as well. Okay? Right? This is my territory. Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, no, serving God is serving God completely. In other words, not just Nefesh HaElokit serving God, but also Nefesh HaBahamit serving God. Okay? Paro says, forget it. I'm the boss over here. You want to go and do some meditation for a while, once in a while. You want to go to shul a couple of times a week, or even every day. I don't care, but don't pretend that you're going to transform me. Don't pretend that you're going to control my physical reality.
Is it possible to ever transform the physical?
So that's yes. That's what Tzaddik Gamur. When the Tanya talks about it, Tzaddik Gamur, he's talking about. He says that the language that he quotes from the Zohar is one who's not only subjugated his animal soul, but has actually transformed it. And the terminology that's used is turned the bitter into sweet and the dark into light. So that the animal soul not only doesn't oppose the divine soul in serving God, but actually willingly contributes its energy. Okay? Now that level of tzaddik is rare. Okay? But take for example, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Can you even imagine working for 40 years without a single day of vacation? Right? On 2 to 3 hours of sleep a night. How can anybody physically even do that, let alone emotionally, right? But there are people who are on the level that they're so connected with what their soul wants to do, the body just goes along and provides the energy. Okay. Julie's had a birth now, by the way. The lady's name is Nuria but Miriam. She should have a good and healthy birth. So I've seen Judy go 3 days without sleep, full energy. Sometimes she would have like 2, 3 births like happening at the same time. Okay. So how does one do that, right? Well, one does that because you're so focused on something of a higher order that the body just goes along with it. This is, by the way, a documented story that there's this elderly lady, her was walking with her adult son. He got knocked over by a car and got pinned under the car, and she was like around 80 years old. It's documented in the New England Journal of Medicine, and she actually lifted the front end of the car and saved her son. Okay, so that means that there was nothing in the world that was going to stop her from saving her son. Okay, if she would have thought about it, she would never have been able to do it. You ever saw those books, The Magic Eye? Yeah. Are you able to do it? Have you seen it?
I know what the idea is.
It's these nonsense drawings that you sort of like gaze through the page, and all of a sudden it becomes like a 3D image. Have you seen them? Have you ever tried it? Did you succeed? No. You know why you haven't succeeded? Because your mind doesn't let you. You can do it if you just sort of accept it's possible. But you know what happens is you can see the 3D picture, and the second that you think about this doesn't make sense, you don't see it anymore. Okay? So these are little small examples of what we're talking about. In other words, it's can we transform the bitter into sweet? Yes. Do most of us ever achieve that? No, most of us never do. Okay, most of us, the best that we're doing is we're subjugating our animal selves to control it, so that it doesn't control me completely. Okay. So when you're on that level of consciousness that you really understand what it means to bond with God, and that you're really working towards reaching that level of complete bonding with God, and you prayed and you studied, and while you prayed and while you studied, you did achieve some bonding with God. But you wanted so much more. So understand, you wanted so much more. But if you're just satisfied with yourself that look at what I've accomplished, it's dangerous. It's not bad. In other words, don't pretend to don't try to live on a level of spirituality which is not your level. Okay, it's not bad to be satisfied with what you've achieved. Thank God for what you've achieved, and pray that next time you'll do even better. Okay, pray that you'll be next. But take for example someone like the Reb Shlomo. Okay, well, before I talk about the Reb Shlomo, the Holy Visioner used to say that if you don't feel the pain of a woman in labor in a radius of 300 kilometers, you're not a Rebbe. What we're talking about over here is people who love God so much that when somebody is in pain, they actually feel the other person's pain. What's hard for me to understand, and I still don't understand it, is how they could serve God with joy at the same time. That's a hard one. So the Rosh Hashanah is living in a time. There are pogroms going on. There's violent anti-Semitism all over the place, and so on. And he's davening, and he's davening, and he's wanting to bring about not just his own well-being and unity and bonding with God. He's wanting to see the salvation for the Jewish people. He's wanting to see the salvation of the world. Okay, this is really in his guts all the time. Okay, it's they don't think the way everybody else does. I'm just a human being. I'll do my best, and I'll be happy with doing my best, and I'll even try to do a little bit better. These people are mamish in love with Hashem and totally devoted to Hashem, and they feel the pain of the Shekhinah in exile. It's piercing in their hearts. Okay, so he knows he's a human being. He knows that he knows that he has to feed his body. In the Talmud, it says that when Hillel would go to eat, he would say something like that. He's basically going to pay rent to his landlord, so to speak. You know, his soul has to pay rent to the body. You can't do away with the body because the soul cannot do any mitzvot without having the body to operate in. So he has to pay rent to the body. So now, on the other hand, there's a lot of talk in the Tanya about back in the time of the Arizal, in the writings of the Ari, that for such and such a transgression you have to fast so many hundreds of days. For such and such a thing you have to fast so many days, and so on, which we don't do today. Which, by the way,
Why not?
Because
We're capable of it?
exactly, it will be sinful. It will be sinful because you wouldn't have the energy to study, and you wouldn't have the energy to do all the mitzvot that you need to do. I actually asked Reb Shlomo about this once. One of the practices that the early Hasidic masters used to do in Yiddish, it was called Previn Golis. Did you ever hear that? They would go into exile. Like the Rebbe, for example, there's many stories about the Rebbe Elimelech and the Rebbe Zusha. They were two brothers, and they would spend a year or 2 years wandering around, walking from town to town with a sack, with a little backpack or something over their shoulders that all they had was their talis and their tefillin and some dry bread, and they'd go from town to town like vagabonds, beggars. Not that they would beg, but they would come into town. They'd go to a shul. If somebody invited them, good. If somebody didn't invite them, also good. And they would do this for a couple of years in order to identify with Shchinta Bigaluta, to feel close to the Shechina, which is also in exile. Okay, so once asked Reb Shlomo about this, and he said to me, absolutely not. We're not capable of doing that kind of a Badat Hashem. So, but still, when we read about these things, so the reason that we read about how terrible this is and how terrible that is not to make us depressed, God forbid. Depression is the biggest weapon that the Yetzer Hara has. Okay? But rather, it's to put the Nefesh HaBahamit in place. In other words, to get away from the ego interfering with doing the next mitzvah that you're supposed to be doing. Okay? Because ego is a real big issue. Okay? What's the ever heard expression? Everybody lives in the castle of their own skin, right? It's like I'm king over here. right? This is my castle. Somebody's telling me I need to do this. Somebody's telling me I can't taste this food. Somebody's telling me I can't do that. Who's somebody else to tell me what to do? Oh, it's God. Oh yeah, I guess I have to listen to God a little bit. You know what? I'll study a few hours. I'll study a few hours a day, and I'll do my prayers, and and um, and I'll get myself into heaven. That's pretty egotistical, right? Because I'm going to heaven. It's, in other words, it's all centered around the I. Okay, so that's what he's illustrating over here. Is that the and you know what? The Yetzer Hara is very, very sophisticated and very, very subtle. Okay, so the truth is that when you really are doing a lot of good, then you really feel that, okay, good, I fed 100 people, but there's still another 1,000 that are starving, right? So if I'm doing it in an egotistical way, it's like, I fed 100 people. I want to see my name on the wall. Okay, fine. But if you're really caring, right? If you're really caring, then it bothers you that, what about the other 1,000? Right? That's okay. Oh, I live in a good city. There's only a 7% crime rate. Well, it's good compared to a city in which there's a 15% crime rate. But if you really care about people, why are you willing to accept that 7% is okay? Right? Why are you willing to have an economic system where, for the sake of the market, you manipulate the degree of unemployment? Like if there's a 3% unemployment rate, that's like considered to be full employment. 7%, that's okay. 12% unemployment, oh, that's bad, right? Well, 7% is also bad. That means that 7 households out of 100 don't have enough to eat. Okay, so that's the point. From what's your perspective? Is your perspective of, well, I did pretty good, and I'm okay, and I gave my donation, and I did that, and I did that, and it's wonderful. Okay, it's good. You're a good person. You're a good person. It's not the level of tzaddik. Okay, when you really care, you feel that I didn't do enough. And there, the Yetzer Hara sort of sneaks in and tries to tell you, well, you know that you're never going to do well enough. So why don't you just relax and have a good time? Okay, it's it's something that you have to be very careful about. Something that you have to be careful about. Some people, like they say, how can you have more than 2 children? How can you possibly, or 2 or 3 or 4? How many are you in your family, Kanara? 9? Right? Does anybody, well, you don't have to tell me, but I imagine your parents love every one of you and give every one of you everything that you need, right? There's a lot of people that think that I can't have more than 3 or 4 children because it won't be fair to the rest of them, because I can't give them more. It's like a very, I can, like, I'm willing to do so much, and that's all. There's still me. Okay, that's the point. So how about if you continue, Shana?
The greatest fear of all fears that I don't feel I did enough. This is absolutely the holy of holies. You see what it is? When I'm fearful for my life, I'm paralyzed and I can't do anything. If someone holds a gun to me, there is nothing I can do. But imagine I have the utmost fear that maybe I didn't learn enough, maybe I didn't understand enough. I'm not paralyzed at all. On the contrary, at that moment, I can do anything in the world. This is what this world is all about. This second type of fear doesn't exist in heaven. In heaven, an angel gets a clear message as to what they have to do, and they either do it or they don't. The holiness of this world is that there is such a thing as having a fear that maybe I didn't do enough. What I'm capable of doing in this world is beyond. Since this world is so hidden and covered up, and I never know if I did enough, there is this holiness of never knowing if I really did enough. I want you to open your hearts like now. On the one hand, when God sends me a message which is not so clear, I walk around thinking, I could be doing more, I should be doing more. When God's light is shining straight into you and things are clear to you, as much as it's the greatest thing, something is missing. What is it that you are missing when something is clear to you? This holiness of being afraid that maybe I could have done things better. When God sends me a message that's not so clear, I walk around thinking, I could be doing more, I should be doing more. Basically, this is the difference between being in exile and being out of exile. The holiness of being in exile is that God's light is not so clear to you. I have this absolute urge to do more. The Talmud was composed in exile because things were not so clear. Our great sages were always thinking that maybe it's not deep enough, maybe it's not clear enough yet. So this is one side of the coin. The danger in this is that the exile really is a very heavy scene. What happens to you when things are not so clear to you? On the one hand, you have this holiness of doing more, but you also have the chance that maybe you will get completely lost. Maybe I'll lose the whole thing.
Can we stop there for a second? Okay, so right, the danger of exile and the Talmud being composed in exile. Right? I'm sure that you've heard different people saying, friends or other acquaintances, oh, I don't find Judaism relevant, right? And so the question is, so what are you going to do about it now? Are you going to go and look deeper, or are you going to just walk away from it? So the beauty of the Talmud and the whole everything that we've got is basically that the exile makes us, makes us realize that, wait a minute, what was good enough for my father or for my grandfather and made him feel at home and complete with the Torah, it's not working so much for my children. Do I say we've gone bankrupt? Or do I say, no, we haven't gone bankrupt. We just got to go deeper. We got to find deeper teachings. This was basically what the whole thing with the Baal Shem Tov was all about. See, so you had a small group of scholars in the Jewish community, and if you weren't a scholar, well, you weren't really part of the scene. Well, Shem Tov went out and said, no, Hashem is everywhere, and every Yid is holy, and every one of us can connect in the deepest ways. Okay? And what Reb Shlomo is describing over here is that, look, he back in the 60s and the 70s, he was having concerts where he was touching thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Okay? You know where he died? He died on an airplane. Because, yeah. Because he never stopped. Okay? Retirement was out of the question. Okay? And there were times that unfortunately, that he had no choice. He was hospitalized. But after he got better, right back. When the Lubavitch Rebbe had his heart attack, the doctor who treated him reported that that it was such a massive heart attack that people who had such a heart attack would normally be sedated for at least 6 weeks, which the Rebbe refused completely. And when he recovered, he said, not only are we going to continue doing what we've done this far, we're going to do even more. Okay? So that's mind over matter, obviously, right? But if at the end of the day, like Reb Shlomo or the Rebbe were able to say, Baruch Hashem, I've done this much and this much, and that's great, but it really never left them that there's so much more to do. Okay. So now listen to the deepest depths. How could it be that when we were in Egypt, we never did anything wrong? And the moment we came out of Egypt, we started to sin. That's a good question.
Well, we did do wrong in Egypt.
We did, but the Torah doesn't speak about it. The big transgressions of the Jewish people all happened in the wilderness after we came out of Egypt. Okay. In Egypt itself, yeah, it says that we, the Midrashim say that we were doing this and we were doing that, but the text itself doesn't do that. Okay. So the Ishbitzer says that in exile we were armed with an unbelievable shield. What was the shield? Before we even got to exile, God gave us so much strength by giving us our name. Ve'ele Shmot b'nei Yisrael. God gives us this utmost holiness that we shouldn't get lost, so that in the deepest depths we know who we are. Then it says, Et Yaakov Ishu Beito Ba'u. Ishbitzer says that outside of the land, Yaakov is called Yaakov, but in Eretz Israel, he's called Yisrael. The holiness of Yaakov is Eikev. He always thinks that he's at the beginning, just at the heels. I got to do more and more. So you know why God sent us into exile? In order to learn what it means that maybe I didn't do enough. Okay, this is an important point. You've heard of these wealthy people who started from rags, they went to riches, right? And then they turn over multi-million-dollar estates to their children. You know what happens most often?
They wreck the place.
Huh?
They wreck the place and lose all the money.
It goes down the drain, right? Not always, but very often. As a matter of fact, there are stories about rich people who tell their kids that when they're 21, you're out of the house, you're on your own, I'm not giving you any support. And people think that that's so cruel, but in fact, they're doing them a big favor. Okay? Because they're teaching them that they have no choice but to learn how to be self-reliant. Okay? Does every holy man know that his children are going to be holy? Does every holy woman know that her children are going to be holy? Not at all. In fact, if you're born into wealth and you're born into a high level of spirituality, and you don't work your guts out to achieve it, then you start to lose it. Okay. So he's saying that while we were in Egypt, we we didn't do so many mistakes because we realized that we're in exile and we got to do more and we got to do more and we got to do more. When we came out of Egypt, oh, I want more. I want more. I this man isn't good enough. I want meat. Um, like we want to have more comfort. We want more of this. We want more of that. Okay? So the lesson of being in exile is so long as we're in exile, we realize we didn't do enough. So that's just to translate it into our daily situation here in Eretz Yisrael. Okay? A holy person in Yerushalayim gets up in the morning, prays, studies some Torah, goes to work, does some mitzvot, comes home, learns some more, prays some more, goes to sleep. And my question to them is, did you think about your brothers and sisters in Tel Aviv today? Or in Ashdod? Or in Beersheba? Did it bother you that, were you so pleased with yourself that you learned Torah today? But did it bother you for 5 seconds that there are thousands of Jewish kids who are not learning any Torah? Or are you just satisfied that you did enough? That's a deep question. Reb Shlomo was a student at Baron Kotler in Lakewood, whose plan was to make Reb Shlomo the next biggest Rosh Hashiva in the world. The Lubavitcher Rebbe said to him, I want you to go out and start speaking to people and doing things. And Reb Shlomo said to the Rebbe, well, what's going to be with my learning? And he said, you'll have to sacrifice it. You'll have to give up learning as much as you possibly could have learned, because there are thousands and tens of thousands of Jews who don't have any connection, and you have to go out and do something about it. It's a difference in attitude. What's bothering you most of all, that you didn't learn enough for your own self, or that there's somebody else who doesn't even know Aleph and Bet? Okay. And Ayelet, you'll agree that it's a very subtle little tricky thing. Because, wait a minute, there's so much that I need to learn, and this guy wants me to sit down and teach him Aleph Bet?
It's like if someone were to feel the pain of like the reality that there are so many people who are just ignorant and don't have any way to learn, or whatever. It's like also very debilitating for your own mind.
Right. So you better learn how to walk tightropes. That's the thing. You know that you got to do a tremendous amount, and you know that you have to be a real artist in the way you go about it. Okay. So that's the struggle between Olam Hazeh and Olam Ha'emet. That's the struggle. That's the divine soul. And can you imagine? It should never happen to you. Okay. You raise a family, and you've given your children an education, and you've done your best for them. They now have their own homes, and you come into their home, and your children or your grandchildren look at you like, who are you? And they don't even know you. probably is the most horrible thing in the world. Okay. If you can imagine that, you can imagine the pain of the Shekhinah. And like you said, it could be debilitating. But if you really care, you're going to go and you're going to do the best that you can. But that's, imagine Hashem coming into a shul, and there's all these people there, and they're doing all these different things, but nobody seems to know that God is there, right? So it has to be b'simcha. It has to be like Rebbeinu Shalom. I'll take responsibility for what I can take responsibility for, but not more than that. You want more, then you have to give me. You have to give us more resources. You have to give me more resources so that I could do more. I want to do more, but I need more resources. Right? I'll finish with this. Which is the higher part of davening, Shema Yisrael or the Amidah? So explain. Shema Yisrael, you're saying, Hashem, I believe that you are one. I'm ready to die for you, right? In the Amidah, you're saying, God, I need some money. I need some health. I need this. I need that. So why is the Amidah higher? But you're right. The Amidah is higher. Kabbalistically, the Amidah is higher.
At the end of the day, we still need to ask for things.
We need to ask for things, right? But isn't it higher to say to God, I'm ready to give you everything rather than to ask for things? So the answer is that the Amidah is higher because what we're saying to God, I'm ready to give you my life. But you want me to be down here in this world and you want me to do your work. In order to do that, I need health. I need parnasa. I need this. I need that. So you're not asking for it because I want it. You're asking for it because Hashem, I need it in order to do what you want me to do. Okay, shkoyach for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's so weird. Like, one day we can have 12 people, and then it's because it's not a course that you have